Everybody. My name is Richard Brent. I'm the editor-in-chief of A Briefing magazine, which we believe here is the publication for the work and worlds of legal business leaders who are after smarter solutions to business management challenges. Our regular publications, interviews, and regular data-rich reports cover every facet of legal business throughout the year, from business development strategy to risk profiling, process improvement to people management and innovation. The subject that we are looking at today is optimizing collaboration for a remote workforce, a legal workforce, of course. As firms now appear set to have their hybrid working model truly tested, are their people able to access and progress key documents as efficiently as they really need to be able to ensure that client service remains at the right high standard, however remote it may be being worked on? And how will those hybrid working patterns change the pressure on risk management and therefore the reassurance that systems containing sensitive content need to be able to provide? Finally, how well are different technologies converging to create a new normal for real-time communication and collaboration on all aspects of legal work? A reminder before I introduce my guests today that this discussion is being recorded for the full hour and later distributed to the briefing readers. We've also set aside some time specifically during the panel discussion at the end for you to ask your questions or indeed share your own perspectives on the challenges that we've been discussing. I'd very much like to encourage you to raise your hand, here on Zoom, of course, and to come off mute and to ask our guests your questions live. We'd really like to hear your voices as well today as see your questions. So please do that if you're comfortable doing so. So without further ado, my guests today, and there are quite a few of them, are Simon Ferrers, who is the CIO for Legal at Deutsche Bank, Alison Devlin, who is Head of Knowledge at the law firm Evershed Sutherland, John Hunter, who's the Chief Information Officer of the Council of Europe, which is the human rights focused organization, which includes the Committee of Ministers and European Court of Human Rights. And also Dan Hauk, who's Chief Product Officer at NetDocuments, who have also partnered with us in shaping today's conversation. So some very different businesses, some very different organizations there to hear from, and also that we can compare the perspectives of later on. Now, first of all, we're going to hear from John Hunter, who is with us today, but he was a very busy man, so we did take the opportunity to record a conversation with him a couple of weeks ago, and we're going to listen to that first of all, and after that I will be speaking to Simon at Deutsche Bank. But first of all, let's hear what John had to say about document collaboration at the Council of Europe. So John, tell me first of all why it was that the Council of Europe needed to change how people could work together on all of these cross-border projects and manage all of the documents.
Sure. Well, Richard, the Council of Europe's main assets are its knowledge, expertise and information. And as you mentioned, we have a real focus on human rights, democracy and the rule of law. And before we embarked on the implementation of NetDocuments, our over 2,500 users, including the remote offices, could store documents in more than 10 different repositories. There was little or no metadata allowing them to search effectively for documents. And often there were multiple copies of documents, making it difficult for users to find the final version. This could lead to a number of risks, including reduced efficiency and also wasted time. For this reason, we thought it was necessary to build a solid information technology platform to ensure that our documents could be stored securely in an organized fashion and also easily retrieved. Moreover, as you mentioned, the Council works with over 10,000 external parties, for example, experts, government officials, judges, lawyers, etc. So there was a real need for document sharing, security, compliance, and collaboration.
Okay, thanks, John. And how did you reach then the decision that NetDocuments was the platform that you'd use to make all of these changes happen? What features of the technology were particularly appealing to you?
In 2019, we adopted a cloud-first policy, And we wanted to store all our working documents in a single shareable DMS that could be managed directly in terms of security, access, folder structure, etc., by the different departments within the organization. We then spent over 1 year carrying out a vigorous call for tender, drawing up a short list of companies that we thought could meet our needs. This process also included a POC, which meant that our users could meet the companies involved, have demonstrations of their systems, and also have their roadmap explained. We also set up a showroom so that they could try and test the system as well. We like the fact that NetDocuments was built from the ground up in cloud technologies and that the platform was very mature in this regard. We were also impressed by its robust security, compliance, ease of use, and its full integration with Office 365. The collaboration element was also looked promising, and we are working with NetDocuments to enhance its features, especially its integration with Teams. The fact that they have one version of their system was also very appealing, as they can concentrate their support on research and development on one development stream. Moreover, having a central DMS to store documents means that we could introduce common work methods and also best practices.
Very good, thank you. How did NetDocuments support you with the change of management required here? 35 million documents, I think I mentioned. I don't know if that's increased since then, but how did they support you with the change required for moving documents on that scale in that time?
Well, the migration was a huge challenge, as you can imagine, and we really worked closely with NetDocuments and Ticket Advanced, developed scripts to map and migrate the data and over 35 million documents from a variety of sources. We had shared drives, we had public folders, we had SharePoint, etc. And as you mentioned, this was done during the COVID crisis, where the majority of our users were working at home, and this was extremely challenging in itself. However, we developed a rigorous change management approach where we communicated constantly with the business, branding the product, and also really explaining its benefits. We also carried out interviews with users to understand their way of working, as well as creating a network of power users, providing training material, videos, frequently asked questions, etc. And we stored all of this information centrally in an intranet site. We deployed the system in stages, starting first of all with my department, and then we give it to the Parliamentary Assembly, which is one of the major administrative entities. And we thought if we were successful with them, it would give a very strong message to the business. Together with Ticket, we had virtual floor walkers to support the user base. We did basic training, we provided guidelines, etc. And I have to say, dear Richard, it was not easy, but we did it successfully. And this was really due to the real efforts of my team and the constant valued support and advice of NetDocuments and Ticket, our integrators.
Okay, thank you. What stage is the project currently at? How much more have you got to do?
Well, we now have over 1,900 users migrated to the system. In October this year, we hope to have migrated the remaining 600 that largely consists of the remote offices. We intend to follow up our initial DMS change management to create a series of regular DMS training courses, webinars, and also workshops. These will allow staff members to learn more about the advanced features of the system, take part in question and answer sessions, and also to discuss and learn best practices. We're also building a middleware to allow the system to interact with our internal applications, such as our financial systems, e-signatures, and also workflow systems.
Okay, thank you, John. Tell me sort of the practical differences that your users now sort of experience on a day-to-day basis in terms of their productivity and their ability to work from anywhere, at least once they are able to work from anywhere again.
Well, we think that there's much more rigor now, and users are really starting to appreciate the fact that their documents are stored securely, can be shared across the organization, retrieved easily, and that they're more organized. I think that's the main benefits.
Okay. You've mentioned a couple of them, a couple of future plans there, but do you have any others in terms of flexible remote working, process improvement once we come out, the other side of the pandemic, to help people collaborate and move projects forward more efficiently in future?
Absolutely, Richard. We, like other businesses, have seen the benefits of teleworking, but we've also seen the disadvantages of it as well. Having staff teleworking full time, we believe, is not as productive as meeting together now and then physically. However, we aim to introduce a flexible approach, allowing users to telework 2 days a week at home. We're also studying how we can change our overall work environment, including the provision of laptops, etc. We believe that collaboration is key, and we're working closely with NetDocuments in this respect so that we can provide secure collaborative workspaces to work on the multitude of projects that the council deals with each year. This includes working on documents with external experts, having a single thread for chats, editing, and comments, etc.
Today, I'm now going to move on to speak to Simon Ferris, who is the Chief Information Officer, as I mentioned, at Deutsche Bank. Hi, Simon.
Hi there.
So we're talking about collaboration, but you have implemented the NetDocuments solution for document management. So can you tell me what the main drivers were for you initially in transforming how Deutsche Bank approaches document management in the legal team specifically?
Yeah, sure. So the big drivers really were, we had a situation where we had a number of different document management systems, regional systems, 3 different technologies, but a number of different sort of instances of footprints around the world. And that was prohibiting or preventing the lawyers from collaborating as much as they should have been able to do, essentially. Okay. And it meant that we had sort of different installation setups, design patterns for each system, capturing different sort of data around each document. And we were outgrowing the solutions essentially. And then alongside that, we were working on what we call the legal digitalization strategy, which was around bringing in 21st century technology into the bank for the legal department to really kind of materially move us on. So the main driver really was getting everybody onto one document management system. And because it's now, or it was the year 2019 when we made the decision, cloud obviously was one of the big topics for us. So we said, well, if we're going out shopping for a new document management system, we need to go cloud first, which brought some challenges when we assessed it. But what we found with NetDocuments was it gave us the sort of cloud first architecture that brings along with it a lot of the security, or all of the security requirements that you need for filling as you move into that. So that was probably the big thing really, was getting everybody onto one document management system and then growing into it over time, which I'll talk a bit about later on probably.
Okay, yes. And you mentioned cloud and security. Were they the overwhelming drivers for choosing NetDocuments for this system specifically?
Cloud and security, yes, but as a byproduct of NetDocuments being born in the cloud versus some of the competitors that we looked at, where they were still either recently done or mid-flight on transitioning into the cloud, which is a hell of a lot of investment and technological uplift for them. What it meant was NetDocuments, when we looked at the feature release mode, the product roadmap, was that the cadence would be higher, because every dollar, euro, pound that you spend really would go further, because you've already addressed that kind of cloud infrastructure challenge that your competitors are looking at. And we could see that when we looked at the release roadmap whilst we were making the decision. And then since then, obviously been running it now, we've got roughly 60% of our legal team of 700 lawyers or legal staff on the system now. We're seeing that come to life, and the challenge is more, how do you keep up with the consumption of the features, rather than are they giving you enough for you to consume, which is interesting. Okay. So it's all positive there.
Yeah. Have you got any sort of perspective on the challenges of rolling out a change like this within such a complicated and large organization? Were you doing it also? Were you also doing it during the pandemic, or was it before?
Well, it's ongoing now, so yeah, definitely. In fact, it's probably pretty much all been in the pandemic, apart from the initial work. but it hasn't. We haven't really been impacted so much. We were planning to do on-site trainings, etc., and workshops, which we've now moved into a virtual setup, and that's it's not perfect, but we've managed our way through it, and the project hasn't been knocked off course, which is great. But the big piece of advice that I would give is don't challenge status quo. It's easier when you're running a project like this to set markers in time and say, come hell or high water, we're going to hit these. We need to have X percentage on by a certain date. We need to have all of the systems decommissioned by another date to reap the benefits of the investment that you're making to get your ROI, essentially. But when it comes to the decisions that you're making in design, don't accept status quo, because some of these processes, etc., and some of the ways that you manage your documents, you could be from day one, if you're not careful and you do just accept status quo, you could be not getting the most from the software investment that you're making. And that would be the key thing, really, is don't accept status quo. It's not always as easy as I'm making it sound. There's obviously decisions within that are very subjective, but just certainly as a mantra, I would say that would be the key thing for business change.
Interesting, thank you. And you are looking to introduce some other NetDocuments functionality further down the line, aren't you? Specifically around changing collaboration on documents. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so sure. So the approach that we've taken with the project is to go live with our minimum viable product, the MVP, which is essentially integrating NetDocuments into our other cloud infrastructure and all of the line of business software that we run, so that we've got effectively a footprint on that we know all of the different components are talking to one another, and then grow into the software. And over time, once we've got the users on, and one of the topics that we're planning to exploit more and more, or the functionality, is collaboration. So collab spaces, ND thread, mobile, which I would put under collaboration, because collaboration whilst you're on the move is always really important. And I'm sure Dan's thinking there's a lot more out there as well that we could be using. So what we plan to do by the end of this year, once we've got the users onto the system, is then take a step back and then get more next year into that, growing into the collaboration functionality. It needs some thought and it'll need some approvals as we go into that, because we're a bank, we're heavily regulated. So a lot of the dialogue that you would think may be allowed to go into third-party software, especially when it's outsourced to a cloud provider, should be possible, comes under a lot of scrutiny. So we haven't been too aggressive with that, but that's one of the topics that we'll do in the fullness of time.
Okay. ND thread you mentioned there, that is about involving other information, pulling it in from different sources when helping your teams to collaborate on documents, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. So you can sort of do real-time collaboration on the platform, comment around documents, communicate, etc. And that would, in theory, if we get to the point where we have this all blessed and approved, is we've got 700 legal staff sounds like a big number, but when we add in the amount of support we get from external law firms, it's probably a relative drop in the ocean. So there's a lot of people that need to collaborate there within the bank and externally, and they're all working on the same topic, so those degrees of separation are low. What we'd be looking to do with any of the collaboration functionality in NetDocuments is have those individuals be more effective and efficient in how they communicate, and ND thread's just one example of how we might go about that.
Okay, thank you. And you're also looking at the growing potential of enterprise collaboration technology as well for some of the work that your team need to do. Can you tell us a little bit about your thinking there and where that might be applicable as opposed to purely legal technology?
Absolutely. So, I mean, just circling back to a point I just made around surveillance and scrutiny that gets put on communications and put upon communications in the bank. We'll need to make sure that any communication of a certain variety, let's say, needs to be sent across into our data lake for surveillance reasons, so you don't have any blind spots in communication in any line of business specific technology, this being one example of that. So we'd be looking at kind of working with the more enterprise technology level teams to make sure that happens. And then we're a Microsoft and a Google house, and we'll be gradually getting introduction of more and more so on the Google side, because that's a relatively new cloud partnership that we've got. But with Microsoft, we've got Teams, we've got Office 365, all of the usual Microsoft suite that you'd see. So we'll be looking at some of the connectivity around comms and communication from some of the enterprise grade level Microsoft Google S tools into NetDocuments, and then it's going to become a decision as to, you know, what's the primary form of communication, or can we just have it in a sort of set up in a more of a interoperable way? That's a long word, isn't it? So what I mean is so that the communications can be shared essentially, and you've got that connectivity between the different comms platforms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you. For that, I would like to welcome now Alison Devlin, who, as I mentioned, is Head of Knowledge at Eversheds Sutherland. And we're going to talk now about collaboration in a specific function, you know, within the law firm, knowledge, of course. So, Alison, you've been looking for outcomes involving greater collaboration in the knowledge management team. Can you tell us a little bit about what you've been doing there?
Yeah, so the project I was going to talk about today is something that we've been doing to support our financial services sector. And in various discussions with the sector group head, identified that regulatory horizon scanning was something that was really important in that sector. And we needed to be able to offer that on a global basis. And in common with quite a lot of other law firms, most of our existing regulatory horizon scanning work is done by PSLs, professional support lawyers who are based largely in the UK. So we first of all had an issue of we didn't have the right resource to cover the various jurisdictions that we wanted to cover. So we had to solve that. And so we came up with a project plan that we were going to identify a group of associates from around our business who were interested in this particular area of financial services. Particularly, we were just looking at the use of tech in financial services. And we set about, had to create a project team, and how are we going to get that team working together to track various developments and write on those in a way that we could then be using to update our clients.
Okay, thank you, Alison. And what sort of decisions did you reach about the technology that would be required to facilitate a project like that?
Well, when we first started, we thought, well, how would we normally do this? We would normally do this with probably email. So we've got Outlook email, and we'd have to have some calls. And so how would we do that? Well, we're using sort of Microsoft Teams. We had Microsoft Teams rolled out last year. And then sort of we found out that whilst the lawyers only have very limited functionality released to them on Teams at the moment, so they're basically just using it as a messaging function and for telephone and audio calls. So, and I'll say this sort of slightly sarcastically with John and Simon on the line, IT always know how to get the best out of tech. So they were using Microsoft Teams quite differently, and they'd got channels set up which hadn't been allowed for the rest of us. And I found out about Microsoft Teams channels. So we thought, well, actually, we could set up a Teams channel. And one of the other reasons that that worked for us is that we wanted to involve colleagues from our North America operation, and they are on a completely different instance of Outlook, and they're actually on a separate instance of Teams. So when we were just trying to do Teams chats, we couldn't join in the Americans, but you can when you've set up a channel. So we looked at channels, and we've set up a channel for this group. And some of you on this webinar may be sniggering and thinking, goodness, well, how did Eversheds not know about that? But actually, it was quite revolutionary to me when I saw that. So that's what we've done. We've set up a Microsoft Teams channel, and so we've got all the communications going through that. We've got chat groups with that group of individuals and all of the supervising approvers. We've got the knowledge feeds going in there. So a member of my team is feeding in the raw content of the different things that we're scraping for different sources around the world. We've got all of the templates stored on there, so to make it really easy for the lawyers when they find something that they want to write about, they access the template through the Teams channel. The approval processes all run through the Teams channel. And when the piece of content is published, the various publication links then get put onto the Teams channel so that people can easily say, okay, well, the associate in Germany or the associate in New York or whatever has written this piece of content. We should all now go and like and share it and get that out on social media. So it's a sort of a relatively contained project, all using Microsoft Teams.
Okay, yeah. And I asked both Simon and John about change management on a different scale for something like this. But did you have to encourage people to take part in this effort? How did you set about getting people to collaborate? From a sort of people management perspective, if that was something that needed to be done.
Yeah. So that's required a lot of communication. Regular meetings, quite a lot of emails. We needed to get the sector group head involved right at the outset to sort of spell it out to people why this was a really good thing that they ought to be taking on in addition to their day job, and how it was going to be really good for their personal brand and reputation as experts in this field of law. And yes, it's just that constant reminding, constant communicating. John there was talking about, once you've had the rollout of a product, you need to tell them again and again and again, and you've run training, but then they'll tell you they still don't know how to use it, so you need to run further training. And so we're kind of drip feeding that through. So we looked at starting this project in sort of back end of 2020, and we sort of finally got it all up and running properly from about March. And then every month we're just coming back with something else and something else and something else, so that it's taking quite a lot of management, but we are getting some good kind of content out the end of it. And we've kind of proven it as a way of creating content where content was not previously being created. So hopefully we're going to now be able to roll that out to some other teams.
I was going to say there's this sort of demand for the fruits of that elsewhere in the firm now, is there?
Definitely. So I think the demand from clients for being kept abreast of legal change is just growing exponentially. More and more clients, that's what they want, and that's what they expect us to be able to provide. So yeah, we need to be able to kind of work out how we can do that and deliver that smartly, because I just know that we're not going to get a whole load of budget to go and hire people who do this as their sole job.
Mm-hmm. We haven't really talked much about client collaboration, but was there an aspect of that involved in this? How involved were clients in getting this off the ground?
So, well, we had them involved right from the very beginning, actually, because we ran some design thinking workshops back in January, and we had a number of clients that we invited along to them to say, well, how can we? What works best for you? What do you need to know from us? How do you want to receive that? What's that going to look like? Do you want it in a podcast? Do you want it in a video? Do you want it in a written output? And if it's in written output, how frequently do you want that? How quickly do you want that? So they were involved right from the beginning on that. And then we've sense checked what we're doing now with them, and we're getting the feedback. Yeah, this is ticking the right boxes, and yeah, we're still at an early stage, because we've sort of done part one, which is we identified there were two things that we needed to do, and this is based on that client feedback. They wanted something that was quick, and just get something's developed as a bit in development, get something out quickly, and then follow that up with a sort of a more in-depth, more digest approach that gives a bit more of a timeline. And so we've done part A, and part B is what we're working on now over the summer.
Fantastic. Thank you, Alison. Good luck with that. But of course, you're going to stay with us, and I'm going to invite Simon and John back as well. They're going to come off mute and onto video, and also Dan Hauk, as I mentioned, from NetDocuments. And now it is also your turn. So we would love to hear from you, obviously, with any questions based on what you've heard so far for Simon, or for John, or for Alison. But we'd also be interested in your perspectives or your own experiences concerning some of the challenges that we've been discussing. As I mentioned, we'd really love you to come off mute and ask your questions to people live, or to speak to me live. Just raise your hand here and let us know that you're happy to do that, and I will come to you promptly. Okay, I'm going to kick us off though, and it's interesting that there's a whole range of challenges there, both when it comes to collaboration on documents and on content. I was interested first, maybe in Dan, your perspective, sort of, you've spoken to lots and lots of different firms about this. What are the sort of biggest pain points or inefficiencies that you've come across that you see, many firms trying to tackle when it comes to document collaboration?
Yeah, no, great question. And first of all, thanks to everybody for the awesome insights and thoughts, and particularly I just call it Simon and John. Appreciate the opportunity to have worked with you, and I think we've certainly felt a strong partnership there. Allison, look forward to maybe working with you on a project at some point in the future. But I think Allison made a great point in terms of, putting that design group together and thinking about, like, what does that whole journey look like, right? I mean, you really want to think about, as a user is going through and trying to get to some outcome, what are the things that they're going to run into that are friction points along the way that might cause them to drop out and so forth. And so, if you think about even as simple as, hey, I need this separate login in order to get into it. And now I'm not going to do it, right? And so you have to minimize those points of friction and think about how can you keep that user contained on that path. I think that's one of the things that we've thought about, is making sure that in our collaboration platform we're staying inside of NetDocuments. We're bringing that collaboration experience directly into the workspace. We're inviting people in through a really easy workflow. And then kind of giving the kind of flexibility that's needed to align with the organization's goals, right? So, you think about it, do we need it to be very highly structured? And so we're going to control the way that the information and content is going to be governed. Or is this a team that needs a little bit more flexibility? And so we're going to give them that capability as well. And then, a couple of folks have mentioned, teams. I think that's another user journey that we're, focused on supporting, and it's come up so quickly, in this environment, and it's created a lot of challenges about, okay, well, who can talk to who, and where does that content go, and how do we bring our content management system into this new environment successfully, and that's an area that we've focused quite a bit on, and we're seeing great energy around with our chat link product. And so I think those are the types of things that we're seeing, and pretty consistently, I'd say, across different organizations.
Well, thank you, Dan. Thanks. We did have somebody with a question or something to say. It's Carol Aldridge. So I'm going to invite her to put her question or speak to us directly. Hi, Carol.
Hello, Richard. Good to see all of you. This is a really interesting session. Thank you. And I have a question for Alison. I'm head of KM at Burgess Salmon, and Alison is a colleague of mine. So nice to see you, Alison. I loved what you had to say about that smart use of existing technology to create a quick and efficient way of sharing knowledge in an area that you need. I think that's what we've all got to do. We've got to be agile and nimble, and it doesn't necessarily come naturally to law firms, does it? So I really admire that. I think that's absolutely fantastic. Just wondered what you thought about the implications for our more traditional knowledge management systems, which have been all about helping the lawyers to find the best possible starting point. So directing our lawyers to look in one place, perhaps, to find the best precedent, the best piece of know-how, the best starting point. And here we have a team stream, which is completely distinct, I would think. So what are you thinking about? What do you think are the implications for traditional knowledge sharing through your new nimble style?
Yeah. So
thank you, Carol.
Yeah, it's a really good question, Carol, and it's something that we are kind of battling with a little bit, because we kind of we've needed to make the technology available in order to get this group of individuals communicating a bit more seamlessly with each other, because if it was all just going to get bogged down in email and document management systems, and the states run different document management systems from us, it was all going to get just really complicated. So we needed to find a solution to actually get them working together. But you're absolutely right. We have to be careful and not let the cat out of the bag too much, because we're at the same time sort of saying, actually, we do want one true source of truth. We need to have a know-how system that we can say, this is our gold standard know-how system. This is where you go. This is where you access your precedents. This is where you access that, top quality know-how. Ours at the moment is a SharePoint-based system, and we absolutely want people to be using that. The issue with Teams is that you could then be creating hundreds of separate little silos and people just going, and that works for one small team, but it doesn't support the sort of the knowledge needs of the wider business. So we absolutely don't want people using the Teams channels as their personal private know-how stores. We need people to be using the central system. So at the moment, well, we've just, us knowledge people, we're kind of just always having to find solutions, make, do, amend. So what are we doing at the moment? We literally have a knowledge team member who's on that channel, and any output gets copied across into the know-how system. So it's there. It's all of that content is being captured, the final output. Obviously, as we expand and potentially let more teams loose on Microsoft Teams channels, we just won't have the resource to keep on top of that. So we'll have to look at processes at that point.
Thanks, Alison. That's really interesting.
Thanks, Carol.
And thank you, Carol. Yeah, that's an aspect of risk, isn't it, that you'll have to keep on top of. And I'm interested in other of the panelists' views on where are the areas of risk in all of this changing fastest at the moment. Maybe John, from the Council of Europe's perspective.
Sure. And Alison, it's really funny that you said that the IT teams didn't give you access to Teams, because I think we're all a wee bit scared of it, because, you're sort of opening up the Wild West and you've really got to contain it. And I think that this is something that we're really looking at the moment, because we're, slightly anxious that, we're trying to get everybody into one system. And if documents started going into the Microsoft sort of like, cloud, we've got to make sure that we can sync them back or contain them. But we obviously realize that, the Teams of collaboration environment has really ramped up in the last few years. So we are looking at it. We're not against it, but we'll do it in a really controlled environment, because as Alison said, if you let anybody create channels, it'll just become a big, huge mess, and it'll be very difficult for the IT people. And we've got to think of security, compliance, and governance. It'll become difficult for us. So what we want to try and do is contain it. And if we can do it by collab spaces or by syncing back in from the SharePoint libraries, because at the end of the day, the channel is a SharePoint site. But the fact that now, NetDocuments does offer that you can keep the chat, and that's very important for us. As I think that Simon made a very good point. He talked about blind spots, and more and more of the Council of Europe are getting invited into Teams environments outside of our control. So it's exciting, it's interesting, but we really need to contain it.
Thanks, John. Thank you, Simon. You did, of course, mention the blind spot issue, but are there any other aspects that sort of are particularly keeping you awake at night?
Well, it's interesting because the discussion's probably given me a bit of a glimpse into the future here, because John's ahead of where we are at the moment in terms of user numbers and how they've grown into NetDocuments, and Alison's way ahead, I think, of where we're at on the knowledge management topic. So I'm probably going to come off this call feeling a bit like Nostradamus. But so risks around. I mean, yeah, I would totally agree with what's just been discussed around. You want to give the tools, you want to provision the connectivity between your enterprise collaboration, your teams, etc., and NetDocuments, but you've got to have clear principles of what needs to stay where and for what reason, etc. Otherwise, probably, well, in fact, it definitely wouldn't be through any sinister motivation, but there'll be documents and data off piece then, and for a regulated environment like I work in, that's a big no-no. So we haven't quite found that sweet spot yet, because we're still going into the let's get the users on, let's get the system set up situation while going through that process. But I'm hoping that in the fullness of time, it'll become clear how much we can open up, how much we can collaborate with the platform, and how much risk that poses, and where that sweet spot is between not being too risk averse, but not having that kind of Wild West situation that was described. Yeah.
And Dan, you must definitely have a perspective on this, balancing of empowering people on the one hand, but managing that risk on the other. What does that look like from your side?
Yeah, for sure. I think the hallmark of our approach is that we want to allow you to leverage, the kind of thoughtful information governance policies and approaches that you have put forth in document management and content management, creating secure workspaces, having users share content in the secure DMS and so forth, and allow that to be extended easily into these new environments. And that's one of the benefits. I see that there's a question around this. And so I'll maybe speak to that. That's one of the advantages of Thread is that it natively does that. It's natively part of the platform. It understands all the users, all the security, of content that goes into it. And what we're doing is extending that engine into Teams with ChatLink. And so we're allowing you to align those channels with the workspaces, align the security, sync back those documents. We did a webinar with Microsoft a couple of months ago, back in the spring, where we showed how this can work and how it will allow you to effectively deploy Teams and solve for a lot of these concerns that we hear pretty consistently. The other thing I would mention, that maybe a different dimension that we do hear about from a risk standpoint, is really about kind of where is the content stored and what can people do with it. And by that I mean we've talked about kind of the different repositories and the need to kind of consolidate. I think that was a big initiative for several of these projects. But also there's a question that we've run into a lot with larger organizations is where is that content, right? Like physically, can I put documents in a particular country and have them be stored there? And so we have a solution that enables that called FlexStore Pro, and that lets you put documents in an Azure location, in another NetDocuments data center, or into even a local type of installation. And so that allows you to kind of seamlessly solve for, you don't get into the different library situation and so forth. It's all pretty seamless to the user. In fact, John mentioned the metadata required. You can actually use metadata to drive, hey, this document is going to go to Australia and this document is going to go to the UK and so forth. And so, that's been an increasingly popular feature or functionality for some of our larger customers who have to deal with these very, kind of complex information governance scenarios.
Thank you, Dan. Thank you. Conversation is coming in thick and fast now. We've got another question for Alison. First of all, Alison, are you using Teams in any other way for collaboration within Eversheds, or just within the knowledge team, or in other projects where there are multiple internal teams working together in different functions, presumably, or do you have any plans to use it for new collaboration initiatives in the future at this point?
So there are a few small teams who are using it for collaboration. So IT and the service excellence team, this project with the knowledge team. We've been very keen not really to let the lawyers loose on it, partly going back to these things that we've just been discussing. We are a regulated industry. The SRA requires us to have all of our documents stored and accessible, and they have to be in the DMS. And we obviously, and I saw another question come up about, how do you try and encourage your users to put their documents in the DMS and not elsewhere? And that is a perennial problem for us. So that's one of the reasons why the risk team basically had not switched on all of this additional functionality in Microsoft Teams for the rest of the business, because you can tell the lawyers, you must not use this for any client advice. You must not have any matter-related documents stored. They're not supposed to use WhatsApp. They're not supposed to use all these things. They've just become convenient and they are used. So I think that's one of the reasons why we're just trying to keep the genie in that bottle at the moment. But it is being used by small teams, and I think if we can prove particular use cases, and again, it's around communication. So we've said to our bunch of associates, you can only use this channel and this document storage for this project, for these types of documents. So I think we will in the future look to use Microsoft Teams to help collaboration. As I say, we're using the basic functionality at the moment. We've got lots of team chats. Certain product group heads are using it to send out sort of general communications, but that's literally very basic. Create a chat, put a load of people's names in it. You can use it to send messages around. So is that is that really useful collaboration, or is that just it's more sort of messaging, really, I suppose?
Yes, okay, thank you. Another one, we've got another question. What approach have you taken to persuade non-DMS users to adopt NetDocuments? Has the project mandated that all users will need to move to the new DMS? So that's obviously for John and for Simon. John, perhaps I can start with you.
Sure. Okay.
How much mandating is going on?
Yeah. Well, this project, it was we have an IT governance board that consists of the sort of directors of, high-level directors of the organization. And they've given me 100% support to implement the DMS. So people just don't have a choice. They have to use it. And that's challenging in itself, if you like. But, we've moved all their documents and then closed where they could save them elsewhere. So they have to do it. And it's part of our sort of security governance and compliance. I noticed that there was another, I'll just take this opportunity to go back to that. What technical solutions are we looking at? Well, we're working with NetDocuments, but we're also working with NetDocShare, who have got a nice little suite of systems that Dan knows about. And Dan, I know you work closely with them. So, this whole sort of, risk factor and saving documents in multiple places, we really want to contain it. Having said that, the message in the users is that you use NetDocuments to save your documents. That's where they go, and it's point blank.
Okay, thanks, John. How about you, Simon, on the sort of
yes.
the rules around this? Yeah.
Same sort of thing, really. I mean, we've used it as the program that we're running to implement NetDocuments. The benefits case for that is largely based around, because these are quantifiable benefits, but around decommissioning the file share locations we've got, the footprint on the file shares in the bank, but also the legacy DMSs as I've described them before. So what we're effectively doing is shepherding all of the users from one location and across to another, and then we can see the user appeal fund gradually going up to the level that we were at before, where we've had all of our users then moved across. So that's the approach that we've taken with and as we go through these communications, the change management sessions that we have with the lawyers. Obviously, we're positioning it differently there. We're showing them, here's the benefits of the new system. This is what you're going to get. This is potentially what's going to come down the line as well, and just letting everybody know that there's a lot of carrot, whilst the stick's there in the background because we're going to move you across. There's a lot of carrot involved here because this is a system that you've been saying, not necessarily the brand, but don't take that the wrong way, guys, but it's the type of system that you've been looking for a long time. A lot of our lawyers have come out of law firms, private practice, and they've been using systems and been document management systems and been desperate to get onto what they describe as a 21st century DMS for a while. So I don't think too much in the way of stick, but we've definitely given them a lot of carrot to bring them in.
Thanks, Simon. Thank you very much. Another question, once documents are in NetDocuments, how easy are they to search, find, especially if there are, as we said, millions of them? I have to come to John for that one, I think.
Sure, no problems. Richard, yeah, I mean, the search features in NetDocuments are great. And, what we did as part of our sort of campaign to get people over to the new system, as we said, have you ever asked this question, why can't I find the last version of a document, or why can't I find my documents more easily? And people really see the benefits of the search. It's actually really good. At the moment, it's based on Solar, I believe. And we found that the performance is excellent.
Yeah, if I could just add to that, John, that's something that we take a lot of pride in. Our indexing pipeline is one of the core values that we offer, because it allows us to not only provide great search experience, but also to add, kind of document intelligence and so forth to it. And something, to be honest, that we take probably a bit for granted. I was talking to a firm that went live recently and said, when the users used to perform a search against a large set of documents, like the whole repository, they would get up and go get a cup of coffee because the research results would take a few minutes minutes to come back. And so they were just literally stunned that it was, seconds and high quality search results, filtering and so forth. And so those are the kinds of things that when you make that kind of difference in a lawyer's experience are really fun to be able to deliver.
Thank you, Dan. Alison, I imagine searchability is something of interest to you as well. Is an area where you're looking to improve efficiency in any particular ways? Do you relate to the times taken there?
We're also upgrading our document management system at the moment, and our new system, which is, I'm afraid, not NetDocuments, but we're going with another system, and we're going live with that in the autumn. And one of the things that we are really excited about with that is, well, there's two main things. It'll be far better from a security perspective, because it will automatically basically be creating documents within a project or a matter space, whereas our current system, you have to lock documents down. So it'll be complete opposite. It'll be locked down by default, unless unlocked. The security is massive. But in terms of your question on the searchability, yeah, we're really looking forward to that, because that will be, it'll give us far more flexibility in terms of the search terms, but also much easier to profile documents going in. So at the moment, one of the things you have to put on your profile form is, what type of document is it? Well, why can the system not recognize that if it's being created in PowerPoint, it's probably a presentation. If it's being created in Word, it's probably a document. If it's being created in Excel, it's a spreadsheet. So just taking away that one field from the creation form. So it'll be easier to create those documents, and certainly we're hoping it'll be a lot easier to retrieve that. So at the moment, yeah, it's not something that's not a knowledge project. That is a sort of an IT-driven project. But what we're really excited about as a sort of a stage 2 of that project is how we can then look to potentially leverage is that potentially going to offer us a new knowledge database solution? Because the search functionality looks really good.
Thank you, Alison. Thank you. Well, I managed to get through 55 minutes, I think, only mentioning the word hybrid once at the very beginning. But I think we do have to come on right at the end to ask, to what extent is all of your thinking around this being shaped by future working patterns, such as a hybrid arrangement in or out of the office. John, at the Council of Europe, your workforce has sort of been working hybrid anyway, pre-pandemic, hasn't it? Would you be looking to make more changes to that arrangement from a technology perspective, or are you where you need to be?
Yeah, definitely. I think that most organizations now are sort of seeing the benefits of allowing people to be able to, it's now known as flexi work as opposed to telework. And we are now sort of doing a reform in the Council of Europe to look at all of this and to give users the capability to work maybe 1 or 2 days at home. But as I mentioned earlier, I think it's really important that users still come into work, and especially when you're pushing out a big system or you want to have a big meeting with interaction. I think everybody's got a lot of video conferencing fatigue, so we want to strike the right balance.
Okay, thanks, John. Simon?
Similar sort of situation. We were working more remotely in some geographies versus others. We're going to be, obviously the pendulum swung right across now, and I think it's going to swing back as everybody starts getting back into the right cadence for remote versus office working. But this is one of the reasons why we want to make sure that the collaboration and the mobile side of things is addressed when we're looking at features and functionality from the rollout of NetDocuments, because that's going to be really important. So yeah, I mean, it's a similar sort of situation. A lot still to play out, but I think a lot of the work practices were sort of there previously, and we largely have an office base rather than field lawyers type work practice anyway, so it should be easier to manage from that point of view.
Okay, thank you, Simon. And Dan, I'm going to give the last minute or so to you. What sort of NetDocuments is thinking when it comes to supporting firms or other organisations? We've heard from 3 very different ones today, with the new normal, next normal that may or may not be coming soon.
Yeah, well, I think two things. One is for us, we really didn't see a significant change in user behavior when we look at it from a data perspective, and everybody went home. The numbers stayed the same and then actually started going up as people started working more and at different times over the course of the day than what they may have been traditionally doing. And so, you know, being able to support that was really, again, gratifying without having to create a whole lot of change, at least from a platform perspective. And then as going forward, it's really enabling firms to kind of build new solutions on top of you know, a platform using kind of low and no code type of tools like Power Automate. We're seeing just a tremendous amount of innovation being delivered, you know, using our, you know, NetDocuments in combination with other technologies as well. Actually, was just talking to a customer that's put a new platform or application on top of NetDocuments, and it was, you know, they said it had all those capabilities that they needed in order to be successful, very mature APIs and ability to integrate. And that's what we want to do. We want to enable our customers to be successful on the platform, and you know, that's what we aim to do.
Thank you, Dan. Thanks. And thank you to everybody. That's the full hour. Thanks to Simon at Deutsche Bank, to Alison at Evershed Sutherland, to John at the Council of Europe, and of course to Dan at NetDocuments. And thank you all for listening in. I'll see you again soon.